Awareness is a blade, not because it cuts the world, but because it slices through the illusions within you. People often speak of awakening as if it is some peaceful realization, like sitting beneath a tree and discovering the meaning of life. But real awareness is not romantic. It is raw. It is disorienting. It is painful. Why? Because you are not simply opening your eyes to something new. You are unseeing everything false that you once called truth. And when the mind has been asleep for so long, when it has wrapped itself in layers of story, identity, trauma, and belief, then awakening is not gentle. It is violent in its honesty. There is a moment, often subtle, sometimes sudden, when you realize you are not who you thought you were. And in that moment, the mind panics, because everything familiar begins to fall apart. The roles you played, the titles you wore, the desires you chased, even the suffering you clung to, all of it begins to feel unreal. Not because it didn't happen, but because you realize it was never you. This is the first layer of pain, the grief of losing yourself, even though the self you are losing was never truly yours. People believe grief only comes from death, but grief is also the death of identity. And identity is what most people are most attached to. Think about it when someone says, "This is who I am." What they are usually referring to is their past, their habits, their preferences. But none of that is fixed. None of it is essence. It is memory. It is conditioning. It is survival. So when awareness begins to grow, you start to see how much of your life was lived on autopilot. How many decisions you made from fear instead of freedom. How often you reacted instead of responded. How you chased validation while pretending to be confident. How you ignored your own voice just to fit into a world that never understood you. And when you see all of this clearly, not intellectually, but directly, it hurts because truth is sharp. It doesn't come with apology or comfort. It comes to burn away everything that is not rooted in reality. This is why the first stage of awakening feels like collapse. You don't feel light. You feel heavy. You don't feel free. You feel lost. You don't feel empowered. You feel exposed. And this is the trap most people, when they feel that pain, turn back. They blame the path. They say, "This isn't working." But in truth, it is working. The discomfort is not a sign of failure. It is a sign that the shell is cracking. A snake does not shed its skin comfortably. A caterpillar does not become a butterfly without disintegration. You are not different. Awareness will strip you. It will leave you naked in front of yourself. No excuses, no masks, no distractions. You will begin to see the subtle motivations behind your actions, how often you lie, not to others, but to yourself. How you use business to avoid inner stillness. How you cling to chaos because silence feels unbearable. And the deeper you look, the more uncomfortable it becomes. Because awareness does not stop at the surface. It wants all of you. Your thoughts, your habits, your fears, your contradictions. It pulls it all into the light. And when that light touches the darkest parts of you, the shame, the guilt, the jealousy, the anger, there is nowhere to run. You cannot unknow what you now see. You cannot hide behind ignorance. And this is the second layer of pain responsibility. Once you are aware, you are responsible for your choices. You can no longer blame the world, your parents, your past. You must now choose consciously how to live, how to speak, how to act. And that weight, the weight of conscious living, it is not for the faint-hearted. The greatest obstacle to transformation is not the outside world. It is not society. It is not even your past. It is the part of you that believes it must survive at all costs. Your ego, the ego is not the enemy. It is a survival mechanism. It was built to protect, to define, to navigate. But the same structure that helps you function in the world also becomes the very thing that resists your evolution. You see, the ego is afraid of one thing above all else seek change, because change threatens its control, change threatens its narrative. And most of all, change threatens its identity. When you begin to awaken, you start to see that much of who you believed yourself to be is not truth, but habit. Conditioned thought, emotional reflex. The ego whispers, "This is who I am," but what it really means is, "This is who I've always been, and I don't want to let it go." It attaches itself to roles: the strong one, the victim, the success story, the misunderstood. And with those roles come stories. Each story is like a thread woven into a tapestry that says, "This is me." But the moment you begin to examine that tapestry, to pull at the threads, the ego reacts. It becomes defensive. It tells you to stop. It tells you you're in danger. It tells you that without these stories, you are nothing. And so resistance begins. The resistance does not always look like a loud rebellion. Sometimes it is subtle. It shows up as procrastination, as distraction, as spiritual bypassing, seeking knowledge without applying it. It shows up as emotion, anger when you're challenged, anxiety when you're uncertain, sadness when your sense of self begins to dissolve. The ego will use anything it can to protect itself, even pain. It would rather stay in familiar suffering than face the unknown freedom that comes with transformation. Because freedom, real freedom, requires the death of who you once thought you were. To the ego, this is unacceptable. It fights back in conversations. It needs to be right. It needs to be seen. It needs to be respected, validated, obeyed. When someone challenges its viewpoint, it takes it personally, because its opinions are not just ideas, they are extensions of its identity. It will cling to beliefs even when those beliefs no longer serve you. It will hold on to relationships even when they are draining your life force. It will resist forgiveness because it feeds on the power of being wronged. It needs to be the hero of the story or the victim, never the space in between. And in moments of silence, in stillness, when the layers begin to peel away, the ego panics. It fills the space with thought. It floods the body with urgency. It creates inner dialogue where you're wasting time. Doesn't make sense. This path isn't for you. You're not ready. It does not say these things because they are true. It says them because the unknown is terrifying to a structure that was built entirely on what is known. This resistance is not a flaw. It is simply what the ego was designed to dog, protect continuity, protect identity, protect the illusion of control. But spiritual awakening is the invitation to dissolve that illusion, not to destroy the ego, but to see it clearly without becoming it. Yet each time you witness the ego, it shifts, it adapts, it creates a new layer, more subtle, more refined. Even the idea of being spiritually awakened can become a new identity for the ego to inhabit. It wears humility as pride. It turns discipline into performance. It clings to the image of being beyond ego while secretly strengthening itself beneath the surface. This is how deep the resistance runs, not because the ego is evil, but because it fears disappearing. There is a silence that follows awakening, not the silence of peace, but the silence of separation. When the journey inward begins, you don't just lose illusions, you start to lose people. Not always physically, but energetically, emotionally, spiritually. And this is a reality few speak about. Loneliness on the path is not the same as being alone. You can be surrounded by people and still feel like you no longer belong. You hear conversations and wonder why they feel empty. You smile, but your smile doesn't reach the same place. You participate, but somewhere deep inside, you feel as though you are watching a play you no longer believe in. This is not arrogance. It is not judgment. It is the recognition that your inner world has shifted beyond what your outer world understands. The old connections, the ones based on shared pain, gossip, distraction, or conformity, no longer nourish you. They echo with memories of who you used to be. But that version of you is dissolving. People notice the change. They say, you're different. Sometimes with curiosity, often with discomfort. Because your transformation threatens their stability, your silence reveals their noise, your boundaries disrupt their patterns, your depth makes their surface feel exposed. And so they distance themselves, or you distance yourself, not of hatred, but out of necessity. You begin to see the cost of fitting in, the way you used to laugh at jokes that weren't funny, agree with opinions you didn't believe, swallow words you longed to speak. Now, the soul refuses to play that game, but with truth comes distance. Not everyone wants to meet you in the space you've moved into. They miss the version of you that made them comfortable, the agreeable one, the available one, the predictable one. And when you no longer play those roles, some people walk away. Others simply fade. Conversations become shorter. Invitations stop coming. You find yourself in spaces where you don't quite fit, not because you are broken, but because you are growing. This is where the loneliness begins to deepen. There are nights when you crave connection, but not surface connection. You want to be seen, not scanned, heard, not replied to, felt, not fixed, but few are able to meet you there. Even fewer are willing. The loneliness is not just about other people. It is also the inner space you must now occupy alone. There is no guidebook for who you are becoming. There is no crowd cheering you forward. You walk through the unknown with only your breath and your presence as companions. You begin to grieve a version of life that was never fully real. You miss things that were never truly fulfilling. You long for connection, but cannot betray your authenticity to get it. Sometimes you wonder, will anyone understand this version of me? You ask yourself, have I gone too far to return? And the truth is, you cannot go back. Once you've seen the illusion, you cannot unsee it. Once you've tasted presence, distraction feels unbearable. Once you've known silence, noise becomes intolerable. You carry this weight quietly. You smile at others even as your soul feels the distance growing. You engage in small talk while your heart longs for a deeper language, one without pretense or performance. And though you try to explain your shift, words often fail. Because the path you're walking is not intellectual, it is experiential. It is felt in the bones, in the breath, in the quiet moments when nothing is certain but your own awareness. And so you stay still, you walk slower, you listen more, you speak less. You search not for crowds, but for resonance. You stop needing to be understood by the many and begin waiting for the few who know the taste of solitude and the sound of truth without noise. The control is the illusion that gives ego comfort. It creates the appearance of stability in a world that is, by its nature, uncertain. From the moment we are born, we are taught to grasp, to hold on, to shape, plan, direct, and dominate. But on the spiritual path, one of the first truths you must face is that awakening is not something you do. It is something you allow. And this is where the struggle begins. The mind is conditioned to believe that surrender is weakness, that letting go is failure, that release is defeat. But in truth, surrender is power. Letting go is clarity. Releasing control is the only way to meet life as it is, not as you wish it to be. Still, this against everything the ego has built. The ego wants to control how others see you. It wants to control your reputation, your image, your outcomes. It wants to ensure that the future is safe, the past is justified, and the present is manipulated in just the right way. And when this control begins to unravel, when you start to see that much of life is outside your hands, the ego panics, it tightens its grip. It creates plans, structures, and backup plans. It obsesses over what might go wrong. It clings to judgment. It tries to correct others, fix situations, manipulate timelines, not because it is evil, but because it is terrified of uncertainty. Control is rooted in fear, fear of loss, fear of rejection, fear of failure, fear of dissolving into the unknown. And yet the spiritual path constantly brings you into this unknown, not as punishment, but as invitation. You begin to realize that the tighter you grip, the more suffering you create. You try to control relationships, and they break under the weight of your expectations. You try to control outcomes, and you feel crushed when life does not obey your vision. You try to control your own thoughts and emotions, and discover that repression is not healing. The path asks something different. It asks you to trust, not blindly, but deeply. To trust that not everything can be understood, that not every emotion must be fixed, that not every question has an immediate answer, that not every storm is meant to be avoided. Letting go of control is not about becoming passive. It is about becoming aligned. It is the recognition that your responsibility is your effort, not the result. The flower does not control the season. It simply blooms when the time is right. But for the human mind, this is difficult to accept. It wants guarantees. It wants reassurance that if you meditate enough, heal enough, work hard enough, you will get what you want. But real awakening is not about getting what you want. It is about becoming what you are. And to become what you are, you must let go of what you think you should be. You must let go of controlling how others perceive your journey. You must stop needing approval, validation, applause. You must let go of forcing your healing. There is no timeline for awakening. There is no straight line for inner transformation. There are days when you feel open, clear, expansive. And there are days when your entire being contracts. You cannot control when the waves come, but you can learn how to float. Even your spiritual path, the very journey that is meant to set you free, can become another thing the ego tries to control. It becomes a checklist, a ladder, an identity. You meditate to feel calm. You practice presence to feel in control of your state. You chase enlightenment like a goal to be achieved. But the deeper you go, the more you realize it, this is not something you can grasp. The more you chase it, the more it slips away. The more you try to force silence, the louder your thoughts become. Surrender asks for something radical. It asks you to let go of the outcome, to release your grip on how life should unfold, to stop demanding clarity before you take a step, to walk into the unknown without needing to control what you will find. There is a part of you that you do not show the world, not because you are hiding from others, but because in many ways you are hiding from yourself. This is the shadow. The shadow is not evil. It is not a curse or a flaw. It is the part of your psyche where you have buried everything you believed was unacceptable, unlovable, unworthy. The anger you were told not to express, the fear you pretended not to feel, the envy, the shame, the get, the jealousy, all of it lives in the shadow. It was placed there, often in childhood, when you learned that certain emotions, certain thoughts of your being were not safe to express. So you pushed them down, you denied them, You covered them with a smile, with achievement, with perfection, with spiritual ideals, and yet they never disappeared. The shadow waits. It waits in your reactions, in your triggers, in your projections onto others. It shows itself in the way you judge someone harshly, not because of who they are, but because they mirror something you don't want to see in yourself. You say, I don't like that person, but what you really mean is, they remind me of something I rejected within me. Facing the shadow is one of the most difficult parts of the spiritual journey because it requires radical honesty, not just about what you've done, but about what you've avoided, what you've pretended not to feel, what you've convinced yourself doesn't exist inside you. The path is not about becoming light, it is about integrating the dark. And to integrate it, you must first see it, not judge it, not escape it, not fix it, but see it. This is not comfortable, to look in the mirror and admit that you've manipulated, that you've lied, that you've hurt people, even when you believed you were being kind, that some of your compassion was performative, that some of your confidence was compensation. The ego doesn't like this. It will say, that's not me. It will rationalize. It will blame. It will say, I was doing my best, and perhaps you were. But facing the shadow means going beyond justification. It means standing in the fire of your own truth without flinching. You will see parts of yourself you thought were long gone. Old wounds that still bleed, old behaviors that still whisper. You will feel resistance rise. You will want to distract yourself, to escape into positivity, to quote spiritual teachings, to stay on the surface. But nothing grows in the surface alone. The roots grow in the dark, and if you do not face the shadow, you will live a divided life. You will act kind, but feel resentful. You will speak of love, but harbor hate. You will seek peace, but project chaos. This inner split is exhausting. And eventually, the soul demands wholeness. The shadow is not there to destroy you. It is there to be healed. But healing does not happen by ignoring it. It happens by inviting it to speak. Sit with your anger. Ask it why it exists. Sit with your jealousy. Ask it what it is trying to protect. Sit your fear. Ask it what it remembers. Do not try to silence these parts of you. They have something to teach, something to reveal. They are not obstacles to your awakening. They are part of it. You are not here to become perfect. You are here to become whole. And wholeness includes the parts you hide, includes the rage you never expressed, the sorrow you buried, the desires you condemned, the mistakes you carry in silence. Each shadow is an invitation to turn toward what you've run from, to hold the parts of you that no one else could hold, to sit in the dark long enough that your own presence becomes the light. Progress on the spiritual path is not proven in moments of insight. It is not shown in dramatic breakthroughs or in the sudden intensity of emotion during meditation. It is revealed quietly, humbly, through consistency. It is one thing to awaken for a moment. It is another thing to live with awareness day after day, breath after breath, when no one is watching and nothing is guaranteed. The ego loves intensity. It loves novelty. It craves big moments, impressive results, sudden shifts. But true transformation is not dramatic. It is steady. It is ordinary. It is built in silence. Anyone can be present when life is calm. Anyone can speak of discipline when they feel inspired. But the real test is, can you remain committed when nothing around you is changing? Can you show up for your practice when there is no motivation, no external reward, no one clapping for your efforts? The mind will tell you, this isn't working, this isn't enough. This path should feel better than this, and still the work remains the same. Sit, breathe, observe, reflect. Discipline is not about pushing, it is about staying. Not staying where you are comfortable, but staying with the path you've chosen, even when it tests your patience. Even when you want to give up, even when the results are invisible, you will wake up some mornings and feel resistance. You will want to sleep instead of sit. You will want to numb instead of reflect. You will want to scroll instead of breathe. And that is where the real training begins. Not in avoiding the resistance, but in walking through it. Consistency is not about perfection. It is about relationship. Your relationship with your own growth, your relationship with discomfort, your relationship with silence. Most people break not because the path is too hard, but because they expect it to be easy. They expect fireworks, immediate peace, constant clarity. And when the path feels dull, when it becomes repetitive, they move on to something new, a new technique, a new teacher, a new identity. But all that searching is often just a way to avoid the deeper truthing. You already know what to do. You simply have known it long enough to see where it truly leads. Mastery does not come through intensity. It comes through repetition, not forced repetition, but reverent repetition, a quiet honoring of the power, one breath, one step, one choice at a time. And yet the ego resists this simplicity. It says, can't be enough. It says, there must be more, but there is nothing more. There is only presence, and presence must be practiced every day, especially on the days when it feels pointless. When life is chaotic, when your emotions are unpredictable, when your mind tells you there is no progress. These are not signs to stop. They are signs that you are deepening. Because the deeper you go, the more subtle the distractions become, the more seductive the doubts feel, the more tempting it is to take a break, to tell yourself you'll return tomorrow, that you've earned a rest from your own evolution. But the path does not reward occasional effort. It reveals itself through consistency, through devotion, through the choice to return again and again to what is real. It is easy to be consistent when things are going well. It is when you are tired, discouraged, or confused that consistency becomes sacred. This is the test, not of your strength, but of your sincerity. Do you truly want to know yourself? Then keep showing up, not with grand gestures, but with steady presence. If the meditation feels empty, even if the journal page stays blank, even if your body feels restless, even if your thoughts are loud, you return, you breathe, you observe. You walk with the discipline of one who understands that the most profound transformation often happens when nothing seems to be happening at all. There is a moment in every sincere spiritual awakening when you look around and no longer recognize who you are. You are not who you were, but neither are you sure who you are becoming. This is not confusion. This is the death of the old identity. At first, it feels like loss, because your old identity was built carefully, layer by layer, story by story, reinforced by culture, family, beliefs, success, failure, roles. It told you who you were. It told you what to chase, who to please, what to fear, what to hide. And you listened, not because you were weak, but because you were trying to survive. The identity became a mask, a personality, a character you wore so well that eventually even you forgot it wasn't truly you. You became the achiever, the caretaker, the rebel, the wise one, the victim, the leader, the peaceful one. But awakening starts to strip it all away, not all at once, but slowly, relentlessly, with quiet pressure. The roles begin to crack. The labels feel heavy. The praise no longer feeds you. The criticism no longer defines you. Something in you begins to shed, and this is terrifying, because the identity gave you orientation. It helped you understand your place in the world. Without it, you feel naked, vulnerable, exposed. You try to hold on. You grasp for routines, for habits, for the familiar. But the soul is not interested in repetition. It is interested in truth. And truth does not fit into identities. It cannot be boxed, named, or controlled. So the old begins to die. Quietly, violently, mysteriously. You feel parts of you dissolving. Opinions you used to defend no longer matter. Preferences shift. Relationships feel different. Ambitions fade. People ask, what's wrong with you? But they are asking the wrong question. It is not what's wrong. It's what's leaving. And the thing that is leaving is not a flaw, but a false self. Yet the mind doesn't let go easily. It mourns what is familiar. It wants something to hold on to. Even pain feels safer than the unknown. And so you enter a space in between. A space where you are no longer who you were, but not yet who you are becoming. It is a death without a funeral. No one sees it. No one acknowledges it. But inside, something sacred is breaking. This is why the awakening is not a romantic experience. It is raw. It is emptying. It is the undoing of all the scaffolding you thought was your foundation. You begin to realize that so much of your life was built around pleasing others, proving something, protecting yourself, being the right version of yourself to be loved, accepted, understood. And now that structure no longer stands. It's not that you forget how to play the roles. It's that you no longer want to. You no longer want to pretend, to shrink, to perform, to explain yourself to those who refuse to listen. You crave authenticity more than belonging. You crave alignment more than admiration. You crave peace more than being right. This craving comes from the soul, and the soul has no interest in identities. It wants freedom, but freedom comes at a cost. The cost is everything that is not real, every mask, every script, every story that told you who you should be. It all begins to fall away, and underneath there is silence. Not the silence of absence, but the silence of possibility. This is the moment many turn back because they feel lost. They mistake this death for depression. They think something is wrong when in fact something sacred is being born. But birth is messy. It does not come with clarity. It comes with contractions, with chaos, with darkness before the light returns. There is no timeline for this part of the journey. meaning like you go to bed, you cannot rush your own becoming. You can only breathe through the loss and trust that what remains is more real than what you've ever known before.